What is the difference between international abuse scandals and child protection in Sweden? When the world learned what happened in connection with Jeffrey Epstein, the shock was not only about the crimes themselves, it was about how power, money, and institutional silence allowed a system to operate for so long. What we learned was this: when power lacks transparency, abuse can continue unchecked. That is why the question must also be asked in Sweden. How does power function when the state removes a child from their parent? Sweden has one of the world's most far-reaching systems for compulsory child removal under its Care of Young Persons Act, LVU. The stated purpose is child protection, but every forced intervention is one of the most severe actions a government can take in a person's life. Research consistently shows that separation from parents carries profound psychological consequences. Attachment theory, trauma research, and developmental psychology all demonstrate that prolonged separation can leave lifelong scars. International observers have, at times, raised concerns about aspects of Sweden's child welfare process, including evidentiary standards, proportionality assessments, and inconsistencies in foster care supervision. There are documented cases in which children have suffered harm while placed in care. There are cases of inadequate oversight. There are parents who describe profound lack of transparency and limited communication. When a child is prevented from maintaining contact with their biological parents for extended periods, fundamental questions arise. How is proportionality ensured? How is evidence tested and evaluated? How is the child's own voice safeguarded? How are decisions independently reviewed? To ask these questions is not extremism. It is democracy. If a system is strong, it should withstand scrutiny. If a system is just, it should not fear independent review. When children return from long-term placements struggling with psychological distress, we must examine the causes. When parents experience total powerlessness in the face of state authority, we must analyze the balance of power. The difference between a criminal enterprise and a state authority lies in legal structure and declared purpose. But the similarity that must always be examined is this: power without full transparency carries risk. Therefore, what is required is full transparency in child removal decisions, strengthened legal representation for parents, independent national and, if necessary, international review mechanisms, systematic long-term follow-up of children placed in care, publicly available data on reunification rates and psychological outcomes. This is not about conspiracy. It is about accountability. If Sweden is the rule of law nation it claims to be, it should be willing to open its data, allow independent examination, and demonstrate that every child's rights are genuinely protected. In the end, this question is not ideological. It is human. Where is the child's voice? Where is transparency? Where is proportionality? When the state intervenes in family life, the standards of evidence, oversight, and accountability must be higher than anywhere else. That is how trust in a democratic society is preserved. Not through silence, but through light.